Greetings and salutations, everyone, and welcome back to tonight's second half. Before we get into tonight's second half, a couple links. As you know, I rely on Patreon, PayPal, and the merch to help the channel to continue to grow and go. The links to Patreon and PayPal are in the description below. My merch is displayed directly under the video. Also, Dogman Frightening Encounters, Volume 1 through 3, the audiobook versions. They were written and researched by Tom Lyons, narrated and produced by me, Jeff Nadolny. Those audiobooks are available on Audible, Amazon, and iTunes, the links to which are also in the description as well. And finally, last but definitely not least, if you'd really like to help support this channel to continue to grow and go, simply subscribe, click that like button, and please leave a comment. It really does help, and guys, it definitely matters. Now, everyone, I have taken far too much of your time. Let's get on with today's second half, shall we? Alright guys, today's second half is got one heck of a terrifying hiker encounter. And I do a lot of hiking, or I try to do a lot of hiking as of lately. Last summer I did more than I've done probably in 10 years. I would hate to have this experience happen to me. Also, I said I was going to do a bonus in the middle of the day. I got caught up with stuff. I apologize. I couldn't do that today. So, with that, let's get into it. Today's first experience comes to us from Tennessee. All right, everyone. So I recently had an encounter with, well, something, and I'm not really sure what it was, as I actually never really saw it, but the encounter seems to be in line with things that I've read on the internet. It was approximately 2 weeks before Halloween. Now, let me start by saying I'm not an avid outdoorsman. I love hiking, and I've spent countless hours in my city's 16 square mile state park nature preserve, whatever you want to call it. But I'm not a mountain man by any means. The park is home to several indigenous mammals, birds, fish, and reptile. It's full of small ponds, thick brush, and even swampy marshes in spot. There are designated hiking and biking trails that sprawl the area, but there are also several wild areas that aren't really maintained or used. Being that I have an adventurous streak, and that I also hate being around groups of people, I often find myself in these less ventured or wild areas. Now, it's worth noting that I've never really felt uncomfortable in this park. It's kind of like my safe spot. I go there to get away, decompress after work, or just to be alone sometimes. It feels like a second home in ways. Anyway, enough background information and rambling. I just pulled up to one of the less commonly fished ponds, Beaver Lake, and I intended to circle to the far side 3/4 mile from my truck on one of the hiking trails that goes right next to the tree line and then into the tree line, and then push further back onto one of the old horse trails. Now, this horse trail in particular doesn't get used much anymore. I can't really say why for sure, but I've heard a myriad of different reasons from different people. Most logical explanation is that it's just not as convenient to get to anymore, and it gets pretty swampy when it rains. I'd be able to follow the normal hiking trail for almost the first 3/4 of a mile, but I'd have to fork left off the trail once I went into the tree line. The gate to the old horse trail was about 500 yards to my 9 o'clock from there, just through an overgrown thicket and up a slight hill. I made my way over a 4-foot gate and started to explore. I had about an hour and a half before sunset, and I had a strict F the woods policy at night. So, I'm watching my time. My main goal for this adventure was to snap some pictures of the area for a project I had been working on, and I'll admit, I was a bit more distracted than normal. Anyway, close to an hour had passed. I had gotten some good shots and figured now was a good time for my egress. It'd take me close to 30 minutes to get back to my truck, and I was not keen on being stuck in an unfamiliar area at night. I set my backpack down on a stump and dropped to one knee. and started packing and organizing my stuff. I'm really not sure what the catalyst was, but I suddenly felt this terrible sense of dread. I slowly turned and scanned my surroundings. Nothing really seemed out of place. I stood up and grabbed my bag. When I took a step forward, a leaf crunched under my boot, and I realized that everything was dead silent. Now, as I said above, I'm not an avid outdoorsman by any means, but I know well enough that silence like this is an indication that a predator is nearby, and you need to quickly but calmly make your way out of the area and stay vigilant. It's worth noting that while mountain lions and black bears are not technically indigenous to my area, there have been more than enough caught and relocated for it to be a valid concern. I've been stalked by a mountain lion on one other occasion, and this felt eerily similar, so that was at the forefront of my mind. I'd been moving for probably 5 minutes, and everything honestly seemed fine. I'd lulled myself into believing that I was overreacting and that everything was going to be okay. I didn't see anything, I didn't hear anything. Good, right? Wrong. By this point, the trail was completely overgrown on both sides. I could see fairly clearly behind me and a decent way ahead, but my left and right may have well been a falling colored walls. I must have gotten lost in the thought for a moment because I tripped over a root and ate crap. As I picked myself up, I started hearing this soft, cooing or chittering off to my right. It sounded like a mix between a dove and the predator. It would start with a coo or a yelp and end with this weird chattering sound. I'm actually sitting here trying to replicate it, and I sound ridiculous. I'm not sure my throat is even capable of recreating it. Anyway, I'm out of shape and there is no way I'm outrunning anything, so I scramble up, plant my feet, and try to make myself look as menacing as a fat 22-year-old with a backpack and glasses can look. About 100 yards ahead of me, which would have originally been behind me had I not fallen, so toward where I had taken the pics and was moving away from, I saw the underbrush start to shake, and it sounded like something was tearing through it. I only had maybe 20 minutes of daylight at this point, and it would take me at least that long to make my way back to my truck. So I did exactly what you are not supposed to do. Naturally, I turned around and I effing booked it. Knowing good and damn well that I can run for maybe a half a mile, 3/4 of a mile if something's trying to kill me, maybe. I could barely hear anything over my own footfalls and the sound of my heart pounding. But whatever it was chasing me through the underbrush, it was gaining on me. May have well been 15 yards behind me at this point, and I still had a ways to go. I don't know if fear kept me going or what, but I reached deeper and just kept running. My breath got shallow, my vision started blurring, and I was honestly about to collapse when I saw the gate to the horse trail about 300 yards ahead of me. This thing is right on top of me by now, and as soon as I came within arm's reach of the gate, I planted my foot on the bottom rung and launched myself over it. My landing was not graceful. I landed on my right shoulder, tumbled several yards down the hill into a puddle of mud. I wasn't thinking straight now. I stood up, shaking, and I started making my way toward the tree line and pond. I knew what direction to go, and I didn't even bother finding the hiking trail. I just crashed through the brush and undergrowth like some kind of barbarian. I didn't care about the cuts or scrapes or massive amounts of noise I was making. My only thought was to get out. That chattering noise hadn't stopped, and I heard something still moving through the brush at the top of the hill. It wasn't trying to be quiet anymore either. I finally broke through the tree line, and I could see my truck parked across the pond at the top of the hill. I finally took a deep breath and started slowly walking away from the tree line. That ominous feeling lifted, and I started making my way up the trail alongside the tree line. I was able to catch my breath for about 15 seconds, and I heard this god-awful cooing, chittering sound again. and I turned to look back at the tree line behind me. So at the point, there's a trail leading into the tree line in front of me, a tree line to my right, water to the left, and a trail leading alongside the tree line and around the pond to the cars behind me. The direction I needed to go was going before I heard the sounds again. The underbrush at the tree line ahead of me started to shake, and fear took over. I'm thankful that my bag was waterproof and that my phone is water resistant, because I jumped in the pond and swam. I've never told this story to anyone in my personal life. They would definitely think I was crazy. I doubt they'd even consider me credible, especially given my interest in Bigfoot and other cryptids. I don't know what was stalking me this day. I know I wound up cold, wet, and a bit shaken up. I also know not been back to that part of the park, and I can't come up with a good explanation. Beaver Lake is off limits for me now. I think I'll just continue exploring and hanging out in a slightly more populated side of the park. Today's second encounter. This happened a couple of years ago, and I'm sharing it now because, well, I really don't know. I usually refer to it as my Bigfoot experience, but it could be a crawler. Anyway, this was a couple years ago in southern Indiana, near Evansville. It was 2 a.m, and my friend and I had decided to go for a joyride. This would have been the fall, maybe September or October. I can pin the date to the time of year because I live around a bunch of fields and corn stalks were really high. I'd say approaching 10 feet. We're just driving around when I decided to turn on this old country road because it led to a local animal shelter. I'd never seen the shelter before, and I wanted to see what it looked like. Yeah, this is the kind of stuff I like to do on joyrides. Both me and my friend were completely sober. The road ended up being much longer and roundabout than I anticipated, and we basically drove through a bunch of farmland. We were listening to music, and I was driving pretty slow. We got to the long road surrounded by corn stalks when I heard my friend yell out, "Holy yeffin' S!" I put my brakes on and asked, "What's up?" He looked over to the left. I'll describe what I saw as well as I can. Hovering above the tops of the stalks was the top half of a very, very thin body. I remember it had wide shoulders and what appeared to be, in the moonlight, kind of long and swooshy hair. It seemed to have very loose, long arms, odd-shaped head and neck, and very pale in the moonlight. Both me and my friend were freaked out, and I knew this was no scarecrow. The huge farms around here don't use those, or any person. The stalks were much too tall, like I said. I have always called it a Bigfoot, but I don't see any hair on this thing except this swoopy mass on its head. I don't know if this is a good indicator of a crawler, but I saw some areas near me on the map, and I had to share about what I saw. Today's third experience. So this happened a few years ago to me and my mom. I remember every single detail of what happened, and I need some advice. I'm almost 100% sure what we saw was a dogman, maybe a skinwalker. I don't know, the location doesn't add up. It was in Ohio. So when I was about 7th or 8th grade, my mom and I were driving home from therapy, approach of mine. No, nothing for being schizoid, just depression and such. It was winter, full moon, because I remember the snow glowing under the moon. It was only 6, but really dark, because, well, middle of winter. We're going 55 when this thing crosses and stops in front of us. The only way I can describe it is if you combined a deer, a dog, and a human. It stood as tall as our windshield. It had legs of what I can describe as a deer. Its back was hunched over, and it was walking on all fours. It had the head of a dog. Note, it didn't have ears or dog nose, but its eyes were white, and it didn't have a tail. The freakish thing about this creature was its skin. It wasn't a canine with mange or anything. It actually had human skin all the way down to its legs. Too long to be dog legs. Something smelled of rotting meat, and some parts of the flesh were broken open like you'd scrape your knee. It was pale white. You could see its veins. And this thing was fast, like it stood there and just ran across the road in a blink of an eye. Me and my mom pulled over to calm down. We both saw this thing. This sighting was in the southeastern Ohio, near Athens. I haven't seen this creature since, but it still haunts me to this day, and on the highway I'm scared to see it again. Today's fourth experience. I recently decided to move from my sister's home, and I was telling my older brother about a few sightings me and my sister have been having in the last year or so. These were on multiple occasions at random times of the morning and night. He told me to look up online since he's crazy into supernatural things. He told me it might be a Dogman. I don't know what that is exactly. The first time I saw it, I was looking out the front door. I always check outside before I take the dogs out because we live in a kind of town community and people have all types of vicious dogs unleashed, and I never want to have an encounter with any of them. Our front door is all frosted except the center, which is the only part you can see out of, and it's shaped like a rose. I took a look outside and caught sight of this doggish shaped creature, but without my glasses on. I just thought it was a dog. And to be sure of this, I, put my glasses on and cracked the door to get a better look. The only way I can ever describe this creature to anyone is that it was very spiny and it was hunched on all fours. It looked exactly like a human pretending to be a dog from behind. Like it walked kind of funny on its legs. I slammed the door and turned around and yelled for my sister's attention so she could see what I saw. But when I looked back outside, it was gone, vanished, like it was never even there. And this area is heavily wooded across from our townhouse, so I figured maybe it was a dog. And I was just super sleepy and hallucinated everything about it. This is in Georgia. I've lived here my entire life, and the weirdest thing I've seen was a drunk guy trying to ride a dog like a horse. I talked to my eldest sister the next day about it, and her reaction was, "Yeah! What the heck is that thing anyway? I've been seeing it a few times when I pull in from work. The other night my headlights flashed on it and ran into the woods." She later called it the creepy white dog, but admitted that she'll sit and wait in her car for a bit of time before coming in just to make sure it's gone. She even called me once and asked me to unlock the door so she could make a run for it. Some of our relatives have said that it's just a dog and we shouldn't worry about it. Now, you don't really have to do this, but if you were to get down on all fours, raise your back up a little bit, and walk across the floor just like that, that's what it was doing when I saw it. Every step it took looked, well, like a human pretending to be a dog. We never saw its face, though. I'm a little too scared to wonder what it looks like. Today's fifth encounter. My friend and I were out driving pretty late, maybe 2 in the morning. We had been going at least 70 miles an hour, slowing down because our turn was coming up, so naturally on this 2-lane road we were leaning toward the right. Suddenly we see something tall, lanky, fast enough to avoid the car having to be on its hind legs. It crossed our headlights coming from right to left like a swoosh, but it was heading our way, and how fast we had been going, it was conscious enough to avoid us. We couldn't really describe it, but the silence and realization that my friend and I had seen that we suddenly hit. We freaked because the way it happened was so quick, unnatural. We were investigating, deducting, everything, but couldn't make sense of it. It was no rake, no alien, but something. We can't put our finger on it. Now, here's where it comes back. My friend and I were talking about it. We were searching the internet because my friend wanted to. But this creature was at least 8 feet tall. When we had seen this figure, She had made the exact estimate that it was 8 feet standing based on my own car's height. This scared us, but brought us to the conclusion of what we saw. It's real. We wished we had a dash cam, but like any other sighting, we only have our memory. Tonight's final encounter. This experience happened maybe 5 or 6 years ago. I live in a small college town right on the border of Minnesota in central Wisconsin. My two friends Blake, Eric, and I had a couple of drinks at my house, and we decided to go to the park in the middle of our town for a walk. I would say the time was 1 or 2 in the morning. Blake had seen an episode of The Office where everyone was doing hardcore parkour around the office, and we had previously been joking and laughing about it. So as we parked in the parking lot, he hopped out and started off on his parkour run. Eric and I ran after him, laughing, and when we finally caught up with him, we slowed down and started walking the path. We neared the northern part of the path where it starts turning right to go back around to the park. On the outer side of the path, there's a clearing in the trees on the hill leading down to the river below, covered in a foot or two of brush. We debated on heading down to the river, and as we got to the edge of the path is when we saw it. The joking immediately halted as we stood frozen for seconds as our eyes adjusted to the darkness. About 20 feet down this hill, this thing is hunched over facing away from us. It must have heard us as it turned its head to look toward us. From what I remember of the second or two we saw its face, it was almost wolf-like. Its eyes were terrifying. It continued to turn towards us while standing upright on its hind legs, and immediate fear overcame me. I knew right away that whatever this thing was, it did not look friendly and was like nothing I had ever seen before. All three of us absolutely lost it and ran back to Eric's car as fast as we could. I don't think any of us looked back even once until we got to the car. We asked each other what the was that thing, and not a single one of us had even a close to slightest explanation as to what we saw. I stumbled upon an old scary story book in our library. There's an old story from western Wisconsin about a Wendigo. I don't know if that's what we saw or not. Maybe it was a Dogman. Alright guys, I hope you enjoyed tonight's second half. I told you, that is one terrifying hiker experience. Anyway, I may make it up to you guys tonight by doing a live. I'm not really sure yet. I got to figure out how everything is going to work out time-wise. I wish there was more than 24 hours in a day because it's like I cannot get everything I want done in one day. And then the next day comes and it's just more stuff to do. If I honestly could spend every moment of the day on this channel, I would, because, well, it's honestly become just a passion and something that just really fills my life with joy. And I love learning. I love meeting new people. And that's what life is about. Well, family and love too. But anyway, everyone stay safe, stay healthy, and may the Great Spirit watch over us all, and may He guide us down that path that we call life.